Hello and welcome to the first update of the banker's final debt. Everyone was pretty much in agreement of who we will visit today. The first location will be to the Treasury.
Sir Adrian, we are investigating the murder of Oswald Mason.
Capable fellow. Bloody inconvenient, this murder.
Inconvenient?
Mason was to have a report for me, dealing with some rather embarrassing irregularities.
Do you feel that his death might have anything to do with his work here at the Treasury?
Well, the investigation was dealing with some rather large sums of money. But a murder, it doesn't make any sense. It won't stop the investigation, only delay it. Besides, all of Mason's papers were accounted for.
What was the nature of Mr. Mason's investigation?
Well, as you know, the Exchequer is responsible for the financial well-being of the empire. We've relied on Bacon and Company to handle many of our investments. Do you know them?
They are one of the largest investment houses in London.
Yes. And 6 months ago, it came to our attention that they are in deep financial straits. They are not in possession of sufficient liquid assets to meet their current liabilities. They had invested in too many securities that were weighing down the London stock market. So, Her Majesty's government and Lionel Foxcroft, the governor of the Bank of England, guaranteed to cover the discredited securities. But when we audited their books, we discovered they had invested in far more securities than they were reporting. Over £1,300,000 worth.
So Mr. Mason was attempting to trace the additional securities?
Exactly.
Have you any idea who is doing the embezzling?
There's little doubt that Bacon and Company's directors, Michael Essex and Mitchell York, were hoping to profit while England slept.
Okay, I believe that Sir Adrian is in the directory. We can't visit him directly, but he is there. Anyway, let's go and speak to Inspector Lestrade now. Oh, I almost thought that said lemonade.
I still don't understand what possessed the Exchequer to bring you in on this investigation. We've got it all under control.
As always, I'm sure you do. So, Inspector, what happened as you see it?
Typical breaking and entering. Entry was made through an upstairs bedroom window, which was forced open. Then, thinking that the house was empty, the intruder made his way downstairs. He opened the study door and came face to face with Mr. Mason. A fight ensued, which resulted in Mason's death, and the murderer fled through the study window.
Was anything taken?
Nothing. The jewelry and heirlooms all accounted for.
What about the government papers Mason was working on that night?
We sent them to the Treasury. They're all accounted for as well.
Well, I'm curious to know your theory as to a motive for the crime, Inspector.
Motive? Well, we haven't quite got there yet, but I'll let you know just as soon as we discover it.
At least Lestrade is being more helpful than he was in the early cases. We're now going to visit Oswald Mason's residence.
Standing guard, Constable Parks?
Yes, sir, Mr. Holmes. Waiting for the yard to make its final inspection, so I'm making certain everything stays just the way I found it last night.
Where was the body found?
Sprawled across the desk it was. You can see the blood stain on the top. The blighter put up quite a fight, I must say.
How was he killed?
Head was bashed in by a statue.
Is there any indication how the murderer got in?
Looks like the upstairs window. It showed signs of forced entry.
And it appears that this is where he exited. There's a palm print and plaster residue.
Yes, and there are pieces of plaster shards in a pile on the floor. Was it you who found the body, Constable?
No, it was his wife. She came home from her sister's and that's when she found him. I was on my nightly rounds and heard her screaming. Then I came in and I saw this mess. I covered up the stiff and promptly had him sent over to Bart's. Then I gathered up the man's papers and took them to the yard.
What about the murder weapon?
Oh, yes. I had that sent over to Murray at the lab.
Where is Mrs. Mason now?
She was taken to her sister Dahlia's. Dahlia Farmer.
I'm starting to doubt myself over the name of this constable. I swear in the newspaper that it was a different constable. who was first at the scene. But yes, Constable Parks is in the directory. Anyway, enough of that. That isn't so important. So Jasper Meek is next.
There, look who's here. The only doctor in London who may know more about murder than I. Who is it this time, Watson?
Mr. Oswald Mason.
Did in this morning, right after my first cup of tea. His body arrived at the hospital at midnight, 11 April. He was in his early 40s and in very good health. Or should I say in very good health, but also very dead.
An unfortunate combination, to be sure.
I've always thought so. The fellow's death was caused by a blow to the side of his head by a heavy blunt object, and under his fingernails I discovered blood of a different type than his own. Looks like he put up a fight. Nothing very exciting or informative, I'm afraid.
Next up, and last of the visitations for the detectives, is the Bank of England.
I just can't imagine why anyone would want to do such a thing. Oswald Mason was so well liked by all of his fellow workers here at the bank.
How long was he employed here, Mr. Kimball?
More than 15 years. He'd always been one of our most trusted employees.
What do you know about his work with the Treasury?
Very little. One of our responsibilities is to oversee government audits. This was Oswald's area of responsibility. This work is highly confidential. I only know that he was working for the Chancellor of the Exchequer. You'll have to talk to the Governor, Lionel Foxcroft, if you have questions about this. I'm sorry, that's all I know.
May we examine his office?
I suppose that would be acceptable. I am planning to have his secretary, Mrs. Mabel Brown, sort through his papers, but under the circumstances, I gave her the day off.
Here's Mr. Mason's bank statement. It appears that on April 4th he drew a personal cheque for £240.
Look, Holmes, passages for 2 to Greece from Aberdeen Navigation, purchased the 28th of March. Oh, and here's another receipt from Evenson and Company gift shop for 2 statues, dated the 31st.
Here's a bill from the Langham Hotel for £3.06.
What do you suppose we're to make of all of this, Holmes?
I'm not yet sure, Watson.
That was definitely a good start, and we have a lot of new leads. Now we are going to send the irregulars out, and originally it was going to be to Meek, but people thought that visiting him in person would have been lots more beneficial, so we're now sending them to the Raven and Rat Inn. Oh, okay. We will be needing them at some point in this. But anyway, that's enough for now. Thank you for watching, and voting is now open again. Take care. Bye-bye.